Hi there, welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining. This morning we are going to look through Sketchbook 14. As you can see, April 2025 to February 2026. So these ones, it's quite a slow process, as I've said before in quite a few other posts, and if you follow me on Instagram, they're quite slow to put together just because I'm kind of doing other things. This is really the downtime, I suppose, when I eventually go abroad or on holiday, little sort of trips back home, etc. Most of it tends to be in my hometown as well, in Ramsgate, but let's get started. So it's the usual bag, really. I'm just going to go through maybe, the next sort of 30 minutes and just explain. I have all my materials and things that I normally take out with me. So I really wanted to start this sketchbook with a local theme, as I say, in Ramsgate. That's where I'm based, or I have been based for about 4 or 5 years now, down on the south east coast. Very lovely part of the world, and I've always been attracted to the mundane aspects of towns and sort of atmospheres that surround me, and particularly in seaside towns, which is where I am. There's just a different element to it. The architecture is slightly different. We've got so much beautiful architecture in this part of the world, in Kent anyway, but particularly around this area of Ramsgate. So I just wanted to document quite a lot of it, and some of it's kind of broken down and hasn't been open for a while. The whole sort of faded seaside glamour aspect, which is an exhibition I concentrated on a couple of years ago, actually, but that was more my sort of painting side. But these ones, the first couple of pages here are sort of dealing with Ramsgate as a town. The back streets, looking over the sea, sort of towards Deal. This is just on this section here. On clear days, you can see France. But yeah, sort of Victorian lifts and what would have been bits and pieces of the pleasure beach and things like that. So I'm using these Liquitex markers, very thick, chunky. I think this was the very same pen. Getting towards the end of this one now. They get a bit messy sometimes, but they're actually really good if you just wanted to get a block of colour down really quickly. So sometimes when I'm out and about, I don't tend to carry too many materials, as I've mentioned in quite a few videos, but these ones are really good. Posca do ones too, so it depends. It's pretty much exactly the same thing. I have the chunky marker there as well, with a really thick edge. But I think Liquitex tend to do better shades of colours. I haven't really seen any Posca pens that do particular shading. You get your sort of light blues and your reds, and that's kind of about it, really. You do get your sort of salmon pinks and sort of apricot colours, which are really nice. But so it's really a blend between those two, and then we're using some of the smaller Posca pens, some of the smaller sort of tip ones as well for the detailed work here. And it's really just bits and pieces of the town, as I'm walking around, and just getting an eye for certain things. As you live in a place, you get a feel for different bits and pieces of the architecture, and like I say, little back streets. And these are just really, when you buy new pens and you just want to experiment. So there's a whole sort of range. You can see here I'm trying to experiment with different pens, whether it's kind of slightly thicker 0.9 sort of bullet shaped nibs of the Posca pens here, just to get some greenery in. And I just wanted to go down the route of doing these sort of vertical lines rather than getting too much detail in there, just to kind of create that illusion as well. It's partly successful, and these Tombow pens as well here, very well used. I'll come back to these in a second, because I've started to use them more. So there's just little, you know, these are the spots that really attract me. So sections of the town that have been closed down for a while. So you have all this kind of netting and everything that's kind of barriered off. And it just, if you sit in a particular spot, the composition's always key for me. So you just have this central line here in the middle of the page, the sort of horizon line almost. And then I'm just kind of messing around with one of these grey brush pens just to put this in. And it's very quick. It doesn't take that long just to work everything out, and it really structures the whole scene. This one's very sort of front on composition of one of the shelters, one of the many shelters that we have here, Victorian in style. Down a side street in Ramsgate. I've sketched this particular street and painted it many times because it's such a nice sort of spot where you walk into town, and this is St George's Church, one of the main churches in the town. This is a church that you can sort of see from pretty much every point in the town. And this is Canterbury. Again, just using lots of block work. It depends. Sometimes I use these pens before I go out and just completely blitz the whole page with no real sort of idea in mind of what I'm going to sketch. And then once I get in situ to a particular location, I'll just pick out what I think are appropriate pens and just go for it. But this one is a slightly lighter shade of this Liquitex pen here, just to depict the turrets in Canterbury of the sort of outer perimeter of the old city, which is now a car park. So I just thought the difference in between, you know, these turrets that are hundreds of years old and all the sort of modern section of the town as well, the you know, sort of intermingling. I thought made a quite a good, interesting composition. Liverpool lawn in Ramsgate. So really just experimenting again with pens and colours that I don't normally use. I started off on Instagram more than 10 years ago just with black pens, but obviously realised after a while that it doesn't really get you very far. I just wanted to use those in terms of getting a very good likeness of a particular scene, and then I drifted off into colour later on in later posts. But it's quite nice to use sometimes just with these bits and pieces, and you can kind of integrate it into colourful sort of depictions of a particular scene. And I think this one worked quite well. There's a nice kind of colour balance going on as well with these aqua colours for depictions of hedges. And then I also used it for shadows from the trees on the walls of the houses, and then different variations of greys for the road. This is again down a little tight side alley in the centre of town in Ramsgate, pub called the Horse and Groom. So again, just using two colours, really simple, didn't take long. But it's a tiny little alleyway if you come out, and then it sort of comes out into this view, and then you carry on sort of walking down here again with a couple of shops. It's a lovely part of town. And this is Shoreditch, a couple of Shoreditch ones. Occasionally when I get a chance to meet friends or go up and see an exhibition or just catch up with people. Just going up to London because it's not that far from where I am now. So this was one of those days. A very good friend of mine called Phil Dean, the Shoreditch sketcher. So we had lunch, and it was in the summer, very nice day. So this is his neck of the woods, really. So just sketching 3 in one day, which is not something that I normally get to do, but I got down there early, had a very quick lunch with him, had a catch up, and then continued on my way through Spitalfields. Again, just using, there's not too much variation in this book, to be fair. I'd sort of drift into very experimental, what I think is experimental, and very sort of detailed. So my parameters are quite limited. This one I would call sort of old school. This is sort of going back to how I used to sketch a couple of years ago, and occasionally I go back to it with the detail. So we have, this is a good example in terms of a 3-colour, and I've talked at great length before about using a darker colour for the foreground and then the background colour, so slightly sort of lighter shade to get the background to sort of create that illusion of depth. But then there's a 3rd colour that's related, that's just in the background, that shows the shard. So we're getting different architectural styles, we're getting a really good, interesting composition, and also we're getting recognisable buildings from the City of London. That's the edge of the Lloyd's building that was built in the sort of early 80s, I think, mid-80s. That's the shard in the very far distance. And I can't remember the really old sort of church. So it's basically a difference of styles, different architectural styles, and probably sort of 600 years or so that separate this particular building from this one and this one. And that's what I love about the city, just sketching things like that, and really tight compositions. And curiously enough, drawing scaffolding as well. It's an absolute nightmare to begin with, because you're trying to figure out all these sort of patterns where all the bits of poles and things should go. But actually, as you go along, you realise that you're not going to get every bit of detail in there. And it's kind of useless really to try. So just to make it quite abstract, actually. So this is the only trip abroad, I think, in this sketchbook from last year, from last May, to Dubrovnik in Croatia. Absolute amazing time. So this was the view from where we were staying. Me, my brother and his friend. And we stayed for 4 days. So just a little bit of an opportunity to sketch. This is probably my favourite one. This is looking through one of the alleyways to the main sort of church in the square there. And again, just going back to that two-colour process to create the illusion of depth. And sometimes that's all it is, just to stand in one spot. And if you're comfortable enough, if you know that you're not in anyone's way, just to get on with it, really. And just to build up the composition. But even though it looks complicated with the detail, and some bits are, because of the composition, because everything's happening on this particular page in this section, that's really where all the sort of detail is coming from. If you have your point of reference here, then the rest of it kind of is not too detailed, really. You're just sort of essentially, most of it, just filling in the gaps. A trip home to see my mum. So these ones are working from photos. I just thought it would be good to break up the page, her face and then her hands. This one was actually in situ, which, as you can see from all the Tipp-Ex marks, didn't work out too well, even though she sat still, bless her, for a very long time. And that's a fair in Ramsgate that comes every summer. I did actually want to get up early one morning. Well, I did get up early one morning to go out and sketch before they set everything up, because I love all the sort of background bits and pieces of all the sort of setting up of the fair, and when everything's quiet, all the bits that you don't necessarily associate with a fair, all the sort of engines and the trucks and the generators and the caravans. That's all the things that interest me the most. But then it started to rain, so a lot of these are worked from photographs, and I came back and produced, I think, three sketches. This is the one I did start, but finished off in the studio. So this one is from Dubrovnik, and it's a photo that I took on the second or third day. Really nice restaurant high up in the hills, and I wanted to get to grips with a lot of these brush pens, Tom Brow brush pens. So they have a brush on this end, and then a smaller one on this end, and they come in so many different shades, and they're so reliable. They're really good pens, and they last for quite a long time, so I'd really sort of recommend these ones. And also they're good, they're quite long, so you can use them for rulers, as you can see with this one. It's got a little bit messy, so I'll just put this one on here if I'm in situ, which I wasn't with this, and then get another pen out and just sort of, you know, just to get a basic composition down. And then I use that as a guide. So this one was a combination of those, as you can see, with these sort of very simple lines for the horizon line in blue, and then marking this out, a block of colour for the green for the island. But then the other bits were sort of Caran d'Ache pencils, which I don't really use that often, and I'm a little bit tentative with them. And I've had these particular ones for a long time, but they're really good, and I still have some of them left. Some of them I've sort of are worn down to right to the end, but some of them are still intact. So just to kind of sharpen them up and get them to a really fine point where I'm just using them, and that's where the detail comes in. So these are replacing the very small nibbed Posca pens that I normally use, just to mix things up a little bit and just to see if I can do it really. It's just a test for myself. And I was quite happy with the results, actually. I think I will, for my sort of residency, two to 3 days residency in Hvar in Croatia, happening in June, I think I will go back to this method, because it doesn't take very long, and it's quite easy to teach as well. This one's sort of less successful, still in the same colour mode. But just the foliage is quite sort of deep, with all sort of different greens. But it's just me experimenting, really. And this is back in Margate. Again, using the very chunky markers. This is while I was out in situ. Just a really nice, interesting part of Margate that's just up the road from here. And again, just a pen, brush pens, pencil as well. The same one as this one here. Working from a photo. But they're just very light and very immediate if you're sort of marking out, and they don't have to be accurate. they're just sort of marking out different pieces of buildings just to know where you are. And it's not that much different from when I'm using Posca pens. If I was doing this with Posca pens, I would just be doing the dot to dot method, just to give myself a guide, because I don't draw anything out in pencil beforehand. I just sort of go straight in, which is a little bit foolish, but you know, I do enjoy a challenge. This is just sketching people in Ramsgate in the summer. Very quick sketch. Wasn't really going anywhere, but it was fun. Pall Mall in London. And I'll talk a little bit more about this kind of method. Not that it is a method, but later on in another sketch of Piccadilly Circus, where I'm just drawing in sections of traffic and cars and things that are happening where it's kind of overlapped to show the busyness. More crowds. St Pancras Station this time, waiting for a train to go home. And this is a great activity to do if you have 30 minutes, or if you're just kind of hanging around, if you have a few pens, and it's really just a relaxing way of drawing people and getting something down. And it doesn't really have to mean anything. You're using different pens, literally pulling out whatever pen you find first in the bag and just drawing with it. And that was my sort of exercise for 30 minutes. And then another day out in London, another 3-in-1, which is great. You feel so satisfied at the end of the day, because these, I've quickened the pace up a little bit over the years. They used to take more than 2 hours, but now I don't tend to fill. It's quite rare that I fill the page with complete detail like I did in the previous sketches of London. Like this one, for example, would have taken a good 1.5 to 2 hours. But over the years, I've quickened things up, and you do. It's just the way things are. You sort of know what you need to do. You know what colour pens you're going to use. You know the composition. You've done your research. Sometimes you're wandering around, but sometimes you've done your research and you kind of know where you need to be, and even where you need to sit at some points when you're going through Google Street Maps. But I just love the history of London. That it's so full of little bits and pieces. And again, I've said on so many posts before that I try not to go for the usual sort of Buckingham Palace and Big Ben kind of compositions and drawings, because everyone knows where they are and everyone knows the history of these sort of buildings. And I do that occasionally, but most of the time I try and find little kind of nuggets, because I like to sort of educate myself, really, more than anything, whilst I'm finding new places to sketch in London. And I love to put those down on an Instagram post as well, not just the sketch, but a little history into the city of London, where I used to live for so many years. So this is Lincoln's Inn Fields. This is a little what they call the ostler's hut, which is still there. It's kind of used as a broom cupboard now, but this is where, when horse-drawn carriages back in the day, the guy that would sort of intervene whenever carriages would come in and go out, this was his workman's hut, if you like. So this is just around the corner from the Old Bailey and the Royal Courts of Justice. Beautiful buildings. And this was a church in Fenchurch Street, that was kind of up on stilts. If you see the post on Instagram, I've put a film together that discusses it in more detail. And I really wanted to get the composition down very quickly. And there's a building opposite that you can go up to the top, and it's free, and you have this amazing view that looks down. And it's a sketch that I'd wanted to do for some time. So I'm quite pleased with that one, because I actually got round to doing it. So they've actually dug down deep because they're building something else that's going to be sort of surrounding this, but obviously they didn't want to, or they couldn't knock this down. And it's just amazing the engineering behind it, and to keep it where it is whilst they're building a huge, what will essentially be a skyscraper in a couple of years' time. St. Olaf's as well, a really old church that's just a stone's throw away from where this sketch was actually. We can find it again. The sort of central part of London, the banking district. Wasn't too pleased with that composition, but it kind of worked out. And this is Chilham. This is a really quaint little Kent village, about 20-minute drive outside of Ramsgate. And they have a little village pub there, the White Horse. And again, just using these brush pens. Didn't have too much time. Went for a Sunday lunch there. Had a bit of a wander about. And this one as well, I'd sort of finished this one later in the studio actually, but because I couldn't really decide on the colours. But the basic composition I got in, and then all the sort of fiddly bits I sort of filled in later with essentially like a little Tipex pen. Just really, again, sort of experimenting with greens, really chunky markers. That one turned out really well. And this one, so occasionally I get sponsored and I get free pens that are sent out to me. And it was a company called Ahuhu. And I have some here. And they sent out quite a few packs actually. And they're really good pens. I mean, they're sort of up there with Posca ones, dare I say it. So these ones are the brush pens, and they come in so many different varieties and tones. So if you're interested in those, check these bad boys out. And they do exactly the same thing. They're acrylic markers. So these are all brush pens. And then I got sent another pack to test out and then put onto Instagram to try and promote them. So these ones they've got a double point to them. So that's like a bullet point. Again, very much like the Posca pens. And then a fine nibbed point, which is pretty much a 0.7, which I use most of the time anyway. So they worked out really well. And again, just so many different colour variations, as you can see. So they worked out really well. And I use them occasionally just for different shades, which I'll show you as we go through. But I did a short film, and this is St. Peter's Church that's just up the road from me. So I kind of set myself down for a little bit and just looked at where I could sketch, you know. Took my little fold-out camping chair and did a promotional film to help these guys out. Not that they need much help, actually. They've got quite a few followers, but it's really nice when they send you free things. That was the first sketch that didn't quite work. But I did actually put that in the film, the fact that it didn't. But this was me literally trying to figure things out. Back in London, St. James's Palace. King Charles actually drove past me just as I was finishing this sketch. That was very strange. Again, we're going back to the detailed method, but just a couple of washes of colour with these Ahuhu pens. And again, as I was discussing earlier, I just love the sort of, you know, potted history of the back streets of London, whether it's, you know, in this case it's round about Soho area. Newman Arms is a pub, very nice pub. But it featured in a film called Peeping Tom. So I'm really into my film, so I like delving into that aspect. And obviously there's so many films that are set in London. And just really, you know, to sort of educate myself and to educate my followers as well, that they might not know of these less popular tourist spots. So it's a real education for everyone. And then the British Museum, it's got very busy, but again, using the pens that are, you know, the freebies. So that was another successful day, another sort of 3-in-1 back home in Ramsgate, where some of the boats were up on stilts, having some repair work done to them. And back home over Christmas, in a very small town called Sutton in Ashfield. I'm from the East Midlands originally. You can probably tell by the accent. There's still some of it there. So this is the oldest church in town, St Mary's. And I just thought this would make a nice composition. So this was Christmas Eve. Just wandering around, getting some fresh air. This one didn't take too long. And again, just dealing with detail, like a sleight of hand, you know, not getting too detailed with the approach, but just you know, it's all in the mark making, really. And this is a series of apartments just around the corner from me that used to be a hotel called the Granville. And this is the guy that designed it, Pugin. Thought it would make quite a nice, interesting composition. And then again, going back to what I was saying just now about picking different bits, and I'm not just into my films, but into my music as well. So Headon Street, just around the corner from Piccadilly Circus, and this was the spot where Ziggy Stardust album cover was shot, David Bowie. So obviously, you know, this is a sometimes this happens when you get on site and in situ. I wanted to recreate the whole scene with a little bit more to see, rather than kind of focusing in on this particular doorway where he stood for the album shot. But unfortunately, there's quite a lot of fancy restaurants around there now, which, you know, is great, and it's all good for business and etc. But they have these hoardings, and they have these sort of things that are built around the edge of the restaurants now, so it really impedes your vision and your view. So I really had to focus in on just this tiny section, unfortunately, where you can see where the plaque is. So this is where Bowie would have stood for the photo shoot back in '72, I think. But again, it's just about putting films together, little short reels to put on Instagram, explaining why I've done it. So sometimes the sketch is secondary. It's just, you know, the intention is there. But sometimes when you turn up, however much research you do and however many sort of Google Street Map images you look at, until you get there on site, you don't know what's going to happen. You know, it's a busy city. There could be roadworks. There could be, it could have changed completely. So that's just the risk you take. And this is a really successful one for me, and it's slightly going out of my comfort zone, although you probably wouldn't think it to look at it initially, because it's Posca pens, you know, the usual thing. Using one of these Liquitex pens as a guide, almost as a block, to sort of center everything. So this shape here is the sort of background buildings, and then So it's a 3-colour process. So we've got this here, using that as a block and as a guide, and then this lamppost that really sort of frames on the right hand side this souvenir shop right in the heart of Piccadilly Circus. And then you get the statue of Eros in orange. And as I say, just using the lines with all the route master buses and all the traffic and all the vans and the taxis and the people, really just using lines and having fun with it. So a lot of it is unrecognizable, and it feels quite strange, and you're coming out of your comfort zone when you're so used to drawing things in so much detail. But if you tackle a certain statue, or if you can focus in on a particular point where you have detail in place and something to kind of lead your eye into the composition, then the rest of it you can have lots of fun with. And so that's exactly what I did here. So that's, for me, that's a really successful sketch. It doesn't always need to be, you know, you have all your detail here and you have all your busyness. You don't need to continue up and finish the drawing with this very complicated architecture that would have taken me at least another hour. You would have lost all the focal point of the statue and the busyness, and the guy stood here looking after his stall. So this was a mudlarking present that my partner bought for the two of us, a Christmas present. So we went down to Rotherhithe a couple of months ago with a guided tour. You can't just go down there on your own. You have to be licensed to look for bits and pieces that get washed up. And it was a great Saturday morning, and we went for a really nice pub lunch afterwards in a very old, one of the oldest pubs down there, called the Mayflower. And even though I didn't sketch anything in situ, I took lots of photos because we were only allowed down there for an hour. So I took as many photos as I could just to kind of capture the morning, really. And I think sometimes that's all you can do. But it was a good excuse for me to, again, get all the brush pens out and just experiment. And also, as well, going back to black marker pens, which I don't normally use, these sort of Pentel brush pens, and that's all they are, just for this sort of brushwork for the people. So as I say, I took loads of photos of different people doing different things, so this wasn't exactly how the photo was. I was just sort of pinching from probably 5 or 6 photos that I'd taken that morning, and they were the finds. And it wasn't about whether anything was worth anything, because you have to give everything back to the sea, to the River Thames. But the ones that we did find were pieces of an original ginger beer bottle, piece of a Ballonine jug from the 17th century. That was really interesting. Clay pipes, there's quite a lot of clay pipes. Fascinating day. And this is something I don't normally do either, just to, this is very much more my kind of thing that I do on a day-to-day basis in illustration, illustrating certain sort of objects and things like that for articles, for magazines, editorials, things like that. It's not something that I would normally put into a sketchbook to put on Instagram, but it went down really well. And this one again, working from a photo. Really going to town on this. I just wanted to show when the tide is out, all the sort of bits that you don't normally see, because the sea, when it comes in through the Thames, all this normally gets hidden. And it's all the ropes and all the sort of detritus, really, over the years that has just kind of hung on. And using pens like this one in particular that I'll come back to. This is a Posca pen, but it's a brush Posca pen, which has run out of ink. But it was actually really good just to use for the water here, because it wasn't a solid colour. This was another one as well, using the same sort of theory. But I just love the composition and just, you know, being very playful with these guys again. Tom Bow. I'll put all this on the information when I post it on YouTube, just so you guys can find them if you want to. And again, sketch working from a photo. I was actually walking around Canterbury, and I wish I had my sketchbook. It was the only time I didn't, and I was kind of kicking myself because it was such a bright, beautiful day, and the sun that was kind of hitting Canterbury Cathedral. So this is the entrance point, and this is where they check your tickets, and then you go through. So I just thought I'd do a very quick, fun composition of that. Really just sort of building up the colours. So there's only sort of 4 colours in the cathedral itself. The very light Posca, slightly thicker peach, I think it is. And then working over again where the shadows are to give it a sense of 3D-ness. And then this was grey, I think. So a trip up to Scarborough to see my partner's family, or some of her family. And this is the only one of the Bronte sisters that's not buried in Harworth in Yorkshire. She's actually buried in Scarborough. So I thought that would be quite nice to document. And again, very quick sketch. I completely blocked out the page in yellow for some reason. Just hadn't used yellow for a while. I get a lot of comments asking, you know, why do you sort of pick certain colours? And I don't really know why, to be honest. There's certain colours that I haven't used for a while that I think might be interesting. So there's no real analysis to it. And it as it turned out, it worked out really well, because it's it really sort of helped lift out the rest of the sketch. And I don't normally use black pen either, so it worked really well. So that's the gravestone, and that's the sort of main hotel that's seen better days, shall we say. I'll speak of it very kindly, because I think back in the day it would have been absolutely beautiful. But that's the Grand Hotel at the very top of Scarborough. And going back to methods again of with the brush pens that I showed you on earlier sketches of Dubrovnik, but when I was working from photos, that's kind of coming back into play, because they're so gestural and so easy to use, and they're very quick to get down. Obviously the main sort of section took a lot longer, and that was the main sort of point of focus. But I just love this walkway across the bridge and the composition. Just getting very messy with that one. It was very cold and windy, so that took a while. And so did this one. I think this was the day before Scarborough Castle. Beautiful spot, and really good angle actually. And this was literally as the pen was running out, the one I was talking about earlier, the Posca pen. So that's just absolutely gone, as you can see. There's nothing left in it. I think you can refill this, but I quite like the idea of just really going at the page. And because it was such a blustery cold day, it really summed it up. I think the sky is probably the best bit of the sketch, to be honest. That's just me being self-critical, but this probably only took about 40 minutes. And this one in Robin Hood's Bay, we took a day trip out there. It's just up the way from Scarborough. And again, it was very cold and blustery. You know, we are talking mid-February, so you can sort of understand the climate that time of the year. and we're right on the coast, but it's such a beautiful town. I loved it. And just using different pens, again, the colour method of dark versus light, the illusion of depth, but a very simple one because it was very cold. And that was just a very quick one to end the sketchbook. And there we are. These are, as I normally do with the books, just, you know, testing out pens either when I'm in situ or before I head out, testing out different sort of colorways and seeing what's going to match, seeing what doesn't match. But over time, as the sketchbook gets fuller and I'm experimenting more in the back of the sketchbook, it just gets more messy. And you can see that one that I'm sort of trying, rooftops of Dubrovnik, trying all these different sort of methods. Rather than separate sheets of paper, I just put them in the back of the sketchbook there. So that's it. That is Sketchbook 14. So thanks for watching, and click and subscribe and all the rest of it. And yeah, thank you. And on to the next one, Sketchbook 15. Very exciting. And I shall see you very soon. Thanks again.